we have Tim and his wife Cheryl here this morning. I don't know them very well, but I have very fond affection for Tim. I first met him on a missions trip that I went on 4 years ago to Honduras, and I and my daughters went, and Tim and his son Luke went, and that was a very fun time to start to get to know Tim. When we went on the trip, Tim told us the team that he was proficient in Spanish, which we were excited to hear, but what he didn't tell us is that he is enthusiastically proficient at about 5 words in Spanish. And so we heard lots of mucho, mucho, grande gracias to all the children, which was helpful. And Tim also has a very soft spot, tender heart for children. And we saw that working at the ranch with the children that we were working at in Honduras, with his own son Luke, who was on the trip, and with the kids that we'd meet on the mountainside. When we were at the ranch, Tim had a chance to do a chapel service or a devotional time, which is what he's going to talk about this morning, doing with our families. And he gathered all the children, the Honduran children at the ranch, and spoke about God using us to be a light. And he handed out light sticks to all the kids on the ranch, which they were very excited to get. And then he told these kids that God needs to be able to break us and shake us. And as they broke their light sticks and shook the light sticks and they glowed, the kids were all very excited. And even just this summer, 4th of July, we had light sticks. And my kids looked at each other and laughed and said, God has to break us and shake us. And they all started laughing, so that really stuck in their minds. Tim and Cheryl have been married for 31 years, have 3 grown sons, 2 married, and just had their first granddaughter this week. Children finally getting to buy pink things. Tim has spoken regularly to focus on the family, Iron Sharpens Iron Men's Conferences, International Network of Children's Ministry. He's very active in his church and youth group there. And now you can add to your list that you've spoken at Libertyville Moms. So we appreciate this in English, if you want to do that. Thank you, Tim, for coming.
Well, I got to tell you, that Spanish thing was an issue. I came back feeling so good that how I got through, and you know, thought I could handle it. So when I went to Home Depot and I was doing the self-checkout, English or Spanish? Oh yeah, I pushed Spanish. I thought, you know what? I just did. Tim, hey. And I ran into a problem. I don't know what went wrong, but I couldn't fix it because I couldn't read what it said on the screen. So somebody had to come and help me, and sure enough, they sent somebody who came up speaking fluent Spanish, and I had no idea what they were saying. So, yeah, my Spanish is lacking just a little bit. All right. I want to talk to you today for the next little bit about some things. You know, as parents, we want to teach our kids some pretty important things, right? Right and wrong. We want to teach them how to make right choices. We want them to have good character. For those of you who are followers of Christ, I'm not going to make the assumption that everybody is, but for those that are, you want to teach them about God and about the principles He's given us to live by. Often, when we're teaching our kids at home like this, we might call that a family devotional time. People will call it different things, but I'll probably refer to it as a family devotional time. When the kids are young, like where many of your kids are right now, a Bible picture storybook, you can do that, and it works just fine. You skip a page, they tell you, and they want it, and they love the same story over and over. Works great. But that's not going to work for long. And very, very quickly, it's going to change. That won't hold their attention anymore. And the question is going to be, what happens next? What do you do in that next phase? That's what we really want to hit, because it comes so close. And some of you, do any of you have children that are older? They're 5, 6, or beyond? Any of you have some? Okay. All right, so enough of you. All right, so you're already in that zone with those other kids. How do we teach our kids about God? How do we teach them about the principles He's given us to live by as they get a little bit older? The early stage, pretty easy. As it gets older, it gets a little tougher. Now I realize that not everybody here would, like I say, consider themselves a follower of Christ, but I would hope that you would see the benefit of it, because following the principles from God's Word makes an awful lot of sense. In the meantime, many things that we're teaching our kids are all about good values and smart living, wise living. And I think that anybody, no matter where you're at, would feel that was a really good thing. So let's jump into it here. Let me start off by reading you an article that I thought was interesting. The title is "Meanest Mom Sells Car After Finding Liquor." Des Moines, Iowa, Jane Hamilton has dubbed herself the meanest mom on the planet. After finding alcohol in her son's car, she decided to sell the car and share her 19-year-old's misdeed with everyone by placing an ad in the local newspaper. The ad reads, "Olds 1999 intrigue, totally uncool parents who obviously don't love teenage son, selling his car, only driven for 3 weeks before Snoopy mom who needs to get a life, found booze under front seat, $3,700 or best offer, call meanest mom on the planet." And the rest of this article goes on to talk about the public reaction to that, which was extremely supportive of this mom when she did that. The point is this: here's a couple who had really good intentions when they got their son a car. But they soon found out that if they really wanted their son to learn, if they really wanted to protect their son, they had to do something different. Because their plan, their good intentions, it wasn't working anymore. And when your kids are young and you're reading them Bible picture story books and all that, you start out with great intentions. Often you're bringing them to church club programs or to Sunday school, whatever, because you want them to learn about God. You want them to learn about God's principles, and that's all great. But somewhere along the way, oftentimes with parents, that will change. The kids get older, the things that you were doing don't work anymore. So, with the best of intentions, many, many, many parents take a step back and they say, you know what, I think we'll leave this to the professionals. We'll leave this for them to learn at church, with Sunday school. We've got children's ministry workers that can work with them, that type of thing. And so they leave some of that training, some of that teaching, and just leave it to the church. It sounded like a good idea. They do it with good intentions. The problem is it doesn't work. It's not working. And so me on the other end of that whole parenting spectrum can tell you what's going on the other end. Can tell you that will not work in most cases. It's not enough. Kids aren't necessarily becoming more solid Christians. When they're leaving the home, many, many, many of them are also leaving the faith. Okay, they're walking away for at least for a period of time. The couple of hours they've got a week in any children's programs here or whatever at your church, it isn't enough. Kids need spiritual training at home. They need it with their parents, and they need that reinforcement and that modeling. So today we want to talk about some things you can do to be more effective with that. Now, every once in a while we're going to need a volunteer. So, nothing's going to be bad. So when we ask for a volunteer, you want to come up quickly so that we can get more demos in, okay? Now, we're going to need a volunteer to come up here now. So, one of you, as you come up, will just sort of set things up just a little bit. Oh, see? Wonderful. You can stand right over here. That's great. A couple of things we can all agree on. I think when it comes to our kids, the type of kids we want our kids to be, we want our kids to grow up to be a success. We want them to have good character. We want them to avoid pride. We don't want them to be complainers or whiners. We don't want them to be arguers. We want them to be honest. We want them to have integrity. All these different good things. Ultimately, if you're following Christ, you want your kids to love God. You want them to be true to Him. You want them to embrace your faith. Now the question is, how many of you think that that's going to just happen? Yeah, okay, I see you laughing. Okay, you got it. All right, now, you're going to help us demonstrate that. So what I want you to do is just stand here, and we've got an airsoft gun, and you're going to just aim at that target over there, okay? All right. So, now, whoops, we've taken the safety off, okay? So you just go ahead and just take a shot at that target there. Oh, hey, she's experienced. She's good, yeah. She's good. You're doing really, really good. That was a great shot. Why don't we just leave it there for just a second? But we're going to do it again.
Okay.
I'll hold this for a moment. Okay? And we're going to put this scarf on you. And we want to make sure that you can't see, okay? All right. So we're going to put this on. You okay?
Yep.
Okay. Now, I'm going to put this gun in hand, but I'm not going to cock it. And the safety is on, and you're not even going to touch the trigger, okay? But here's the gun, okay? What you're going to do is we're going to turn you around a couple times, and then I'd like you to point it where you think that target is. Okay? All right, so let's turn this. We'll turn you around just a couple of times. Okay, maybe one more time. We don't want you falling over. Okay, now, you go ahead and point where you think the target is.
Oh, I don't want to point at anyone. I think I'm going this way, though.
Wow! Okay, very good. Hold on just a second. She is like dangerous. You're really good.
Good job.
Good job. You can sit back down. Now, it's not very often you actually have somebody aim that well. She's got like this sense about it. When she held it, there was almost like a trembling excitement. She was made for firearms. So, beware. No, actually, most of the time, what do you think you'd find? Their aim's going to be off. Even there, her aim wasn't quite as good as she had it otherwise. What's the key to hitting the target?
Your eye on it.
Got to keep your eye on it. Right. It's aiming. And so if you're filling out, if you've got a hand out there, if you want to use that, great. But that would be probably the first blank that you need to fill in if you want to do that. The key to hitting a target is aiming. You've got to keep that target in view. If you don't keep the target in sight, generally speaking, your aim is going to be off. The same principle applies to raising kids. Okay? The question is, what are we really aiming at? We want our kids to be all these good things, to have good character, to be kids of integrity. We want them ultimately to share our faith, to know and love God. But unless we deliberately plan to transfer the truths of life to them, unless we aim at that, we're not likely to hit that target. Our kids won't naturally pick up on that. Okay? One of the big reasons why is that our whole culture works like poison on our kids. The attitudes, the worldview that's so prevalent in movies, TV, other media, peers, the things that your kids are going to be exposed to more and more and more as they get older. These things will be like slow-working poison on them. And when the effects are obvious in their life, chances are the damage is deep. So, our culture will naturally be teaching our kids very often what is good is bad and what is bad is good. Just really the opposite of what you would want them to know. So what I want to encourage you about is this, is that our culture, as our culture is permeating our kids with that, we need to be proactive. We need to be doing something on the other end to actively combat the effects of that. We're going to look at some ways to do that today with family devotions, but I want to look at a couple of foundational principles first. And that is this, right off the bat, if we understand why this is so important, I think it'll be easier for you to stick with it. But number one, there is a biblical mandate. The Bible says that we as parents need to teach our kids. We are responsible to teach them about God and the principles God has given us to live by. Now, we can go to a number of passages on that. You go to Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4, chapter 6, chapter 11. And it talks about this. We can go to Ephesians 6, and it talks about this type of thing. But I want to read you some verses out of Psalm 78. And I'm going to just read you the first 8 verses because it helps us see things in a little bit different light here. So let me just read these real quick. O my people, hear my teaching. Listen to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter hidden things, things from of old, what we have heard and known, what our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power and the wonders he has done. He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which he commanded our forefathers to teach their children, so that the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born. And they in turn would tell their children. Then they would put their trust in God, and they would not forget his deeds. They would but would keep his commands. They would not be like their forefathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, whose hearts were not loyal to God, whose spirits were not faithful to him. Here's the thing I like about this passage. It refers to the command that we're to teach our kids, and that's important, that biblical mandate, but it also talks about the practical part of it. There's like a practical mandate, why we really need to do this as parents. And it gives you 4 reasons here, 4, I'll call them positive payoffs to teaching your kids about God and the principles of His Word. And here they are. They're in verses 6 and 7. The first one is that the next generation would know. So the next generation would know. If we're not telling them, how are they going to know? Second, so the next generation would put their trust in God. And we look at that trust in a couple of ways. Yes, trusting Him for salvation, okay? But also just learning to trust Him in everyday life. That's critical. Okay, and C, so they'll be obedient to Him. We see that in verse 7. And also there in the same verse, so they won't forget. Psalm 78 goes on to talk about the Israelites and how they forgot God. And failure always follows forgetting. And we read about how the Israelites forgot God, forgot what He had done for them. They rebelled. They weren't loyal to Him. They didn't want to follow His commands. They wanted to go their own way. And at the end of this psalm, verses 58 to 64, it talks about the terrible price that these people paid. And if they could have undone it, I'm sure they would have done it differently. They would have wanted to. Deuteronomy 4:9 says this, only be careful and watch yourselves closely so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen or let them slip from your heart as long as you live. Teach them to your children, to their children after them. See, if we don't pass on this truth that we've come to gain, if we don't impress that on our kids, they'll naturally drift. That's just the way it is. And when they drift, they're going to get hurt. They'll pay a price for it. And we don't want that for our kids. This pattern is repeated over and over in the Bible, so we see and we know that that's the way it happens. It's the principle, you stray, you pay. It's going to cost you. Now, I'm going to read you a statement, and I want to see if you agree with me on this. It's not a trick statement. I believe this with all my heart. I want to see if you agree. Think about your kids now as they're getting a little bit older. They're past the toddler stage, and they're starting to grow up. Our kids won't be truly happy unless they learn to walk with the Lord, regardless of how good they do in school or sports or music or drama or whatever. I believe that with all my heart. Do you believe that?
Absolutely.
Okay? Now, I'm going to fast forward a little bit farther. They're leaving the nest. They're adults now. They're going on their own. Here's another statement. Do you agree with this? Our kids won't be truly happy no matter how good a job they land or how much money they make if their relationship with the Lord isn't there. Do you believe that? Yeah, I do too. The question is, what are you aiming at? What are you aiming at? I'll tell you what a lot of well-meaning Christian parents are aiming at. Where they're focusing their efforts. Here's what happens, okay? Is they focus on school, sports, music, drama, whatever. And that's where it goes. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of those. They're good. They're just not enough. If that's all we emphasize, what makes it any different? What makes that family any different than any other decent family in the United States that has nothing to do with Jesus? There is no difference. Where's that going to end up? Off the target. And so we have to be so careful about that. Even Cheryl and I, as we have high school junior and seniors in small groups and such, and it drives you nuts sometimes, even at that age. The groundings, the this, the that. The total emphasis on the grades, on the homework, to the expense of, oh, yeah, of course you would leave church behind. But you want to leave the sports behind. No, you got to do that. That's a commitment. It's off. It's off. The aim is off, and we have to be so careful about what we're doing. We could name names and talk about people at church whose kids are now on the other end of the spectrum. and they see they made an emphasis on education, they made an emphasis on sports, and their kids aren't with the Lord at all. That's where they develop their friendships. That's where it's this trickle effect. Anyway, we have to be careful about that. You know, parents work hard to protect their kids in many, many ways. When they're young, little toddlers, you're warning them about running out into the street, or you're warning them about strangers. As they get older, it's going to be warning them about drugs and alcohol and bad influences on them. But as parents, we can't be limited to protecting our kids physically. We also have to protect them spiritually. And helping our kids know God, trust God, obey God, and not forget God, go a long way towards doing that. You know, what we're really trying to do is keep them from falling prey to the enemy of their souls, enemy of our souls. And who is that? Satan, right? The devil. Right. Now think of this. If I were to say, tell me what some of your greatest fears are with your kids. Well, let's hear. What would be some of your greatest fears? If something were to happen to your kids, I'm not going to... What would be some of those fears? Oh, I'm afraid this would happen sometime.
Drug and alcohol abuse.
Drug and alcohol abuse. Okay. All right. And that's actually... Think younger. Think about your kids really young right now. What's something that would really terrify you? Kidnapped. Okay. We'll stop there. It's always in the top 5 that they would be kidnapped. Okay, you know, it's generally a health issue or that they would be kidnapped. Right. Yeah, the idea that someone's watching your kids, studying their patterns, strategizing to steal them away. The key is, as parents, we need to remember that someone is watching your kids. To deceive them with the world's so-called truth. To steal them away from you and from the Lord. To lead them on paths that are not God's best for them. To rob them of ever hearing the words, well done, good and faithful servant. And instead for them to know the bitter taste of regret. We've got somebody watching our kids who seeks to destroy them if he can. He knows your kids' weaknesses and he patiently waits. That's what we're up against. There is somebody deliberately targeting our kids. We teach our kids about God and the principles He's given us to live by. So they know Him, trust Him, obey Him, and don't forget Him. Yes, it's a command, but it makes a lot of sense. It's really all about their protection. And we do protection pretty good as parents. And so once we get these two melded together to understand it's really about protection, that'll help fuel us to do this. So we want to help you do it effectively. The question is, where do we start? It's really important to be serious about our own walk with God. And then we create opportunities and we start, whether we feel ready or not. All right? So there's no magic to that. But let's talk about how we're living first. That's pretty important. I need another volunteer to come on up here. So I'm going to step up front. If somebody can come over here, that would be great. And what you're going to do is, see, now you say, well, I want to see what I have to do first. Okay. I'm going to have you stand here like a sleepwalker, and I've got a couple Bibles in this bag, and I want you to go like this, okay? And we're just going to wind it up. In fact, you're not even going to have to go all the way if you're able to do it, okay? But you're going to stand like a sleepwalker, and so somebody is getting up right now. Here we go. Yeah! Look at this. A table of volunteers. Okay, Becky, you stand over here. Hands out like a sleepwalker. Go ahead. Start going. She is obviously not having any problem with this. Okay? You can let it down. That's great. You've demonstrated you can do this. Okay, now, hold your hands up, palms up 1 second. Okay, let's put a little... All right, now, go ahead and do the same thing. Try to keep it on the towel there. That's good. All right, so obviously Becky is having problems. All right, let's switch here. I'll give you this. All right. Now, when her hands were clean, no problem at all, right? When she had all that stuff on her hands, it was pretty much impossible. There's a principle of life here that we need to understand, and that's this. The Bible tells us in Philippians, Becky, you did so good. Yeah, we'll just sort of drop this stuff down here. The Bible tells us in the book of Philippians that we're to be holding out the word of life to other people. The Bible, we're to be that example. Our life the things we do, the things we say, our attitudes, the way we love our spouse, if we're married, all of this and more is how we hold out the word of life. 1 Timothy 4:12 reminds us that we're to be an example for the believers in speech, in life, in love, in faith, and in purity. Our whole life becomes Exhibit A as to what a Christian is all about. Okay? Especially to our kids. Especially to our kids. Now, holding out the word of life is a real responsibility if we don't have clean hands. If we're saying one thing, we're doing something else. If we're sloppy with our Christianity, following the principles, we're not going to be able to hold that word of life out very long. We're not going to be effective doing that, especially with our kids. And here's the thing. Our Christianity won't ring true. And we'll lose our kids' respect. And if we don't have their respect, they won't be nearly as willing to listen to what we've got to say. This is really, really critical. How can we inspire our kids to a deeper walk with God if we're not working on it? And I mean working on it ourselves. I'm not saying that we're perfect. No. But we're working on it. For example, let's say I come home crabby. Hey, I'm tired. I've had a tough day. I can justify whoever I want. But that doesn't square with God's Word. See, because Philippians 2:14 says, do everything without complaining or arguing. Pretty tough to misunderstand the word everything. Right? So when I complain and when I argue, understand at that moment you are not living like a Christian. You are not living the Christian principles. And you see, here's the disconnect, because I'm telling my kids how important it is to live like a Christian. And then if I'm not doing it, they're seeing this, okay? So if we complain and argue, we're not living like a Christian at that moment, period. If I love conditionally, if I hold a grudge, if I keep a list of wrongs, if I don't forgive someone, I can come up with excuses why I might feel justified. But understand, you are not following God's Word. You're not following His principles for life at that point. If I resort to punishing my mate with the silent treatment or the cold shoulder, understand, at that moment, I am not living out my faith. Do you realize that a solid, loving marriage is one of the strongest ways to influence your kids to follow God? It's one of the strongest. When they see my marriage and say, I want a marriage where somebody loves me like that, as they get older, if they can say that, and they understand that I credit my good marriage to God, that encourages kids to follow God as well and to seek a Christian mate. And sometimes I've had parents come up to me, hey, talk to our kids about how important it is to, date only a Christian. Honestly, if they were living a great Christian marriage at home, I wouldn't have to say a word to those kids. I got to try to sell something that the kids aren't going to buy. Okay? If I get sloppy with my marriage, what message do the kids get? I'll tell you, it's one of two things. Christianity doesn't work because it didn't work for mom and dad. Or Christianity is not worth working at because mom and dad didn't do it. It becomes one of these things where their parents are just telling the kids what to do, but they're not living it out themselves. It's a serious, serious issue. And I'll tell you what, my theory, that's the number one reason why kids raised in Christian families are walking away from the faith when they go to college. It's because they've got Christian parents that aren't walking their faith at home consistently. They get sloppy. They get sloppy. Okay, we know these truths about how we're to live. But if we don't live it, we're like the Bible talks about that person that looks in the mirror and they see something wrong, but they don't fix it, and they walk away. That's what we're doing. It'll impact your kids in a very, very bad way. Why am I emphasizing this so much? We're going to go over a bunch of devotional examples that you can do, but that is only part of the equation. The most critical part of the equation is how you walk, your walk with the Lord. How faithful you are to that. To protect your kids, to really be heard from them, you need both aspects. And the most important of that is, how are you walking? You need to be living that genuine Christian life. Not perfect. When you mess up, you fess up. And you go from there. Okay? But we need to work at living a Christian, genuine Christian life. Okay, now let's get practical here. I want to run through some devotional ideas, the types of things that you can do at home. For some of you, you've got older kids, you can be doing those right now. For others, this is where you're going to be going very soon. These are just a devotional, okay? That's different from a Bible study. Bible study is a deep look into the Word. A devotional, you're just trying to get a nugget of truth across. Just generally one principle, something that they can grab onto, and grab onto very quickly. When the kids are young, again, the Bible picture storybooks can work and other things can work. When that stops working, then we need to work with these things. Now, if your kids are young, I would definitely encourage the Bible picture storybooks and the little Christian videos and the different things like that that are going to teach them good things. Yes, do that. Get in the routine, the habit of teaching your kids when they're young so that you can just transition as they get older. And then as they get older, what I would suggest is you're going to do something a little bit more active once a week. And that may not sound like a lot, but over the course of a year, you're getting how many nuggets of truth across to them?
52.
And that's a lot. Okay, so let's get a volunteer up here, and we're going to run through just a little quick devotional, the type of thing you can do. Okay, so no lotion this time. So somebody just come on up here. And were you? Oh, I thought you were trying to get up, and I thought it's your first time here. You're just adjusting the seat. That's probably very smart. Yes. Or you almost got called up. Okay. Now, she won't move the rest of the time. Okay, so here's what we've got. We've got 2 tomatoes here, all right, and I've double bagged them. All right. What I'd like you to do is smash these tomatoes. You can use your fists. You can. I don't think I'm going to have you stomp on them. Okay? You can use this little mallet if you like, but we need you to smash those tomatoes. All right? Now, while she's smashing these, oh, she's got her method. That's great. We got these in baggies so you can do it indoors. Now, if you've got kids, you can smash them outdoors. When I did it with my boys, we said, hey, for devotions, we're going to plant tomatoes, and they're like, woohoo! But it's no, we're going to plant them on the driveway. I want you to throw them as high as you can, and we're going to watch it. Well, now they got into that. So everybody had tomatoes, and they're throwing them up. And in the end, we collected them. You did good. Okay, good. You can sit down. You did a wonderful job.
That's your correct one. Yeah.
All right. Now, we've got these smashed tomatoes. So we pick up these smashed tomatoes. We've got this. Now, the question is with the kids. What do we do with these smashed tomatoes? Is it junk? Do we throw it out? Do we give it to mom? Do we put it in the fridge? What do we do?
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so you're going to get different answers. What do you think some of the kids are going to say? It's junk. Let's throw it out. It's garbage, right? But, Janet, were you the one that said it? Yeah. What? Wait a minute. In the hands of a chef, a smashed tomato is just the beginning of some things that you really like. Like what?
Salsa.
Salsa. What else?
Tomatoes.
Spaghetti. Yes. Pizza. Did I hear pizza? And chili and all kinds of great stuff that they like. Lasagna, right? In the hands of a chef, a smashed tomato is just the start of some really good things. And now we tell our kids, you know, there's going to be some times in life where you're going to feel like a smashed tomato. You're going to feel like junk. Because maybe you don't feel you're the prettiest or the most handsome or the most talented or athletic, or you're not feeling like you're the smartest. Or maybe somebody says something really mean and it hurts. Or maybe you mess up somehow and you make a big mistake. And you know what? You feel like junk. You know what you've got to remember at that point? Is that God is like a heavenly chef. He makes great things out of messed up lives. And we just briefly hit the story of Moses. They probably already know it by this time. Hey, remember Moses? When he messed up, he killed that man. He was on the run out in the desert. What do you think he felt like? I bet you he felt like this. I bet he felt like junk. He really messed up. He probably thought he would never have another opportunity to help his people. He'd been in a perfect position. But God didn't want Moses to use his influence to just help his people. Now, he had a bigger plan, didn't he? God wanted Moses to set his people free. And God changed that smashed tomato of a man into probably one of the greatest leaders of all time. Kids, I want you to remember this. When you feel like junk, you give it to God and you trust God, because God makes great things out of messed up lives. Could you teach something like that? Yeah. Is it effective? Yes. Is it important? Definitely. Some of you remember that story a few years ago. Remember the story about Megan Meyer? Boils my blood every time I think about it. But there's this girl. Well, let me just read you part of the article. It was Darden Prairie, Missouri. Megan Meyer thought she'd made a new friend in cyberspace when a cute teenage boy named Josh contacted her on MySpace and began exchanging messages with her. Megan, a 13-year-old, corresponded with Josh for more than a month before he abruptly ended their friendship, telling her he had heard she was cruel. The next day, Megan committed suicide. Her family learned later that Josh never actually existed. He was created by a member of a neighborhood family that included a former friend of Megan's. Just to give you a little background, remember that the stuff like the Texas cheerleader moms and all that kind of bizarreness, right? That's what it was. Megan had a friend. They had a falling out. Megan's friend's mom knew how to fix Megan. And so that mom set this fictitious Josh up, and they played this little game with her and built her up for a month, and then they pulled the rug out saying they'd heard she was cruel. Megan Meyer hanged herself in her bedroom on October 16th and died the next day. She was just, her parents were in the kitchen. And she'd just gone up, and she'd been gone for 20 minutes. They went up to check on her. And anyway, she was described as a bubbly, goofy girl who loved spending time with her friends, watching movies, and fishing with her dad. It's an important message our kids need to hear. There's times you're going to feel like junk. But God makes great things out of what we would call junk. They need to hear this message. Can you do that? Yeah. Let's do another one with a microwave. All right, so this time we won't actually have anybody come up for a volunteer. We're going to make you guys volunteers at this table. How's that? So what we do is, yeah, we would give our kids safety glasses right there. You have their attention. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to put an egg in the microwave. Now we know that that is something that we shouldn't do. Our kids know it. They will love that. You always want to test it ahead of time. You don't want to ever do anything the first time with the kids, just in case something goes wrong. Now, you don't have to put it in anything. You can just let it go. You just have more cleanup. All right, so I'm gonna put it in a Ziploc. Hey, that egg is moving. I'm gonna put it in a Ziploc here, but you noticed I cut off the corner of the Ziploc? We don't really want to seal it. We're just going to contain some of the mess here. I couldn't tell you the real physics on this, and if it even applies, but little egg, little combustion chamber, big sealed bag, big combustion chamber. Okay? Enough said.
We have a physics teacher among us.
All right, so I don't know if it really works, but the one time I sealed this up, the door did not come off, but it blew open. It was unbelievable. It went like this. And it did it hard enough where it slammed shut, and this puff of steam came up, and I was like, whoa. That had never happened. The people loved it, but I had never done that before. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the microwave. Now, it's going to be very tough for you guys to see it. We don't really want anybody pressing their nose against the window. So we'll just have to sort of simulate, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the time for 4 minutes. No, you won't need that long. When you test it, you want to check it. If you go 1.5 minutes, I'd stop it. Just get a different egg. Because either it's going to be a big boom or maybe it's got a little crack in it. Okay? So anyway, you put it in. Now, here's what we've got for our kids. All right? So we're talking to our kids. Say, all right, Now, about every 8 or 10 seconds, I'm going to say time. What I want you to do is I want you to see if the outside of that egg is changing at all. If you see a change to the outside of that egg, we want to note it. But if you don't see a change, just write NC for no change on your paper. Okay? Can you guys do that? All right, I know it's going to be a little tough for you to do that, so we're just going to start this. And so we do this with the kids, and we start this microwave. We tested it ahead of time because every microwave is a little bit different. Okay, time. Do you see a change the outside of the egg? And if you don't, we just write NC for no change. Okay, good. What's that? It's tough to see. If you need to stand, or if you want to come a little closer.
Not good.
Time.
No change. We'll go with no change.
I heard a crack though.
You heard a crack. Yep, you heard something. That's good. But we're looking to see if that outside of that egg has changed. Okay? Time.
Wow.
And it helps if you're inside the house, obviously, turn out your lights. That makes it a little more fun.
Something's going on with the bag.
Well, the bag...
Ooh.
Yeah! Okay. Good. Now, unfortunately, the bag didn't do a lot of good here. Sometimes
I think this is a good one for the dad to do.
Yeah.
This is good for dads to do? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Here it is. We've got like scrambled eggs with the shells.
Yummy.
Bunch of shrapnel here. Yeah, so
Oh my
we've got eggs all over. This is fun cleanup afterwards. Not bad. No, it's not bad. You don't want to avoid this just because of a little mess. All right? All right, so we've got this egg. Now, tell me, what did you have on your paper here? I see NC, no change, no change.
No change. Bam.
And what was that?
Bam.
Bam. Okay, yes. Now, here's the question.
Bam.
Was there really no change going on and this egg just suddenly blew up?
No.
The change was inside.
It changes inside. Right. It was cooking inside. Now we transition to spiritual truth. You know, kids, this is a lot like life. See, this is a picture of what happens when we hide sin in our life. We hide something in there that doesn't belong there. Instead of dealing with it, instead of taking care of it, we sort of hide it. And you know what? We can look in the mirror and we can see no change. You can sit down at the table with mom or dad, and they don't see any change. And you know what can happen? You can begin to think, there is no change. What you've got to understand is when we deliberately hide something in our life that doesn't belong there, it works like a microwave. It changes us inside. It changes our heart. And two things you can know. If you hide something in your life that doesn't belong there, and you keep it there, instead of dealing with it, like in any of the microwave, two things you can know. It's going to come out. And when it does, it's going to make a mess. Lesson done. We'd share a little scripture with them. But can you do that? And do you think your kids would listen? Yeah, they would. You can get them a nugget of truth with a case like this in a very short amount of time, but it's in a way that they won't forget. Okay, good. Fun with a microwave. There's other things that we could do. Let's do one. This is just wonderful, messy here. Marshmallows. Okay, have you ever microwaved marshmallows?
Oh yeah, that's so fun.
Isn't it?
You can blow up.
Okay, yeah. We got the peeps here
We do
too.
that every Easter.
Good. All right.
Oh, we got the peeps.
Good. We got peeps.
This is
All
a
right.
family tradition in my house.
But any time of the year you can get this, make like a little Michelin man.
you can use
And
street with
so we're just taking like wooden toothpicks and we're just toothpicking this together, big and little marshmallows. Or you can get those, those newer big ones.
Oh yeah.
I'm telling you, that's really fun. Okay, but what you do is you have each one of your kids make a little marshmallow man. And then one by one you're going to put them in here. So let's just put them in here. And we know, actually when you put marshmallows in a microwave, in the first matter of seconds, it actually seems to help. Because they're a little stiff maybe at first and they plump up. And they look good. What happens if we leave them in there? They get grotesque. And they get all weird. And after a matter of time, if you leave it in long enough, it'll start to like do this weird brown melt thing, and then you'll get a little fire. So, not to worry. All right, we won't go that long, but even if you did, it's not that big a deal. Just a little flame in the center.
Did you bring a fire extinguisher?
No, because we're not gonna do it wrong. Okay, and besides, we open it up and it just seems to go out. All right, we're gonna take it out of here. Okay, just to see where we're at. Okay. Okay, smoking.
Smoke. Nice.
And it doesn't smell real good. But right now you can see it's some sort of jello here. But it's actually going to shrink down and it'll get real hard. In fact, you could take this when it's done. It'll be hard. You could tape it up on the fridge, and it'll just stay there as a little visual reminder. All right. So, what do we want to teach with this? Here's what I would teach. Pride. Pride. You know, to be able to talk to our kids and say, hey, you know what? Sometimes mom or dad says, you know, I'm so proud of you. Or you should be proud of yourself. You did such a good job. I mean, you understand that if they really take that in, if they really take your advice, you're hurting them. But we say that all the time as parents. So sometimes we need to say, hey, you know what? Sometimes I say, you know, I'm so proud of you. You should be proud of yourself. You did such a wonderful job. But understand, we really got to thank God about this, right? Either He gave them the ability to do well at something, or He helped them make the right choice, whatever it would be that we're proud of them about. You know what? Let's take a moment. Let's thank God, because you know what? If we start thinking, hey, I'm really something, and they start getting puffed up, pride destroys. The Bible's full of stories. Our newspaper's full of stories. People with pride self-destruct. And so we want to warn them about the dangers of pride. And it's shrinking down now, but this can be hung up as, like I say, a visual reminder of each of their kids. If you read their name on the plate, a reminder. We give God the credit for things, and we have to be really, really careful about pride. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And you could do that, right? And the kids would like that. Okay, good. Let's talk about how do you start. How do you start family devotions? Generally, you're just going to say, if your kids are a little bit older, hey, we'd like to carve out a little bit of time every week where we look at some principle from God's Word as a family. And that's about it. That's about all you need to say. For some people, it's a little bit more complicated. If they've started, they've stopped, or the kids are teenagers. And if you want to talk to me about that, we can talk about that. But otherwise, it's just, hey, we want to carve out a little time every week where we look at some principle from God's Word as a family. And that's it. What you want to try to avoid is the overselling it. Hey, we're going to have so much fun. Oh, you're going to love this. This is going to be great. You know, just make your first devotional short and fun. Let them learn it's going to be fun. Because what happens at a certain point with kids, if you say, this is going to be fun, it sort of sounds like, hey, let's get to bed early tonight, and so tomorrow we'll have a great day. It's that parental positive talk that they're suspicious of. And as they get a little bit older, it goes beyond suspicion, where they would be like, they would die to think that your idea of fun and theirs is the same. And so they'll resist it. Okay? So we don't talk about how much fun is, just make it fun. Make it short and fun. Okay, what about the woman who wants her husband to kind of pick up the ball and lead some sort of family devotions, but he doesn't seem to want to do it? What's going on there? It'll probably help if you understand why he's reluctant. Generally, it has nothing to do with him being lazy or something like that. I'm assuming he's a believer, but why doesn't a man pick up the ball on this? Oftentimes, it amounts to a few things here. First thing is, men like to be in control. And if kids are bored, or they aren't paying attention, which is exactly what he thinks is going to happen, he's going to avoid it. He doesn't even want to start it, because he's not going to feel in control when he does it. 2, many men fear they aren't qualified in some way. They don't feel adequate. Maybe they fear that they'll be asked a question that they can't answer, that they don't know their Bible well enough, whatever. Or maybe it's a personal failure that's holding them back. The devil's kind of whispering in their who are you to teach them? You know what you did, or you know what you're doing. Something like that. So sometimes it's a fear-based thing that holds them back. There's other men that just don't want to take on the responsibility of it. If you say, hey, you know, it'd be great if you're teaching our kids things of the Word, they feel like you're dumping that on them. And it's like they're thinking, you have no idea how big this really is, and how tough this is being, and how high the chances of failure are. And you're treating it so casually. And so they would rather look like a jerk and not fail than to try to take it and fail. Most men, they just don't know what to do with it. They don't know that they can do it successfully. And then, of course, there's some men that don't realize the importance of it. And that one's easy. Once they understand, once they really understand it's about protecting their kids, generally, they'll do better with that. So what do? You don't want to push it on them. You don't want to try to shame it on a guy because you won't have lasting results. If he won't take the lead, sometimes mom has to initiate. But you want to be careful, extremely careful, not to put him down as a man. And that's easier to do than you think. You might nicely ask him for his help. Okay, men are better when you ask for help and when it's not sounding like it's just all being dumped on them, and not in a way where it seems like you're belittling them at all. Okay, so you just ask for his help. Ask him to help with some specific part of this devotional. And it's like, I have this idea to teach the kids about this, and I need you to do this, or I'd like you to do this. Could you do that for me? And what you do is you pick something that he would really like to do, and something that is well within his capability, and then you thank him and show appreciation like crazy later. Okay? For example, let's say we're doing the thing with the little airsoft gun. And that's really a devotional for the kids that talks about what kind of character do you want to have when you grow up? What kind of person do you want to grow and be? And how are you going to get there without aiming? So it's something that we actually are doing with the kids. But let's say you need to do that one. And so you need an airsoft gun. Or if you don't like that idea, I know you would have no problem with that. But she might want something a little bit, not real, but but you can use a Nerf gun. You can use a Nerf gun. You can use a squirt gun. It doesn't matter. But let's say you want to do it with an airsoft gun, and so you need one. So now you talk to your husband. Hey, I have this idea. I want to do this. Could you pick up an airsoft gun? And maybe work with the kids to do it. I don't really want to touch the thing. Now, is that within a man's capability? Oh yeah. So let me get this right. You want me to go to the store and pick up an airsoft gun? Yeah. Okay. Great. They can do that. It's just one little aspect of the job, and so you have them do that. And if they come home with a more expensive model,
Which they will.
yeah, you don't. You just show appreciation in his love language. Okay. All right. So it's spiritual for him, and he might, think that he can do better with a more expensive model. But whatever. See, if you work together, he's not feeling like this is dumped on him. And chances are he'll take these baby steps. And what do the kids see? Mom and Dad working together to teach something out of God's Word. That works. That works really, really good. And you've asked him to help with one part, the fun part. Almost all of the devotionals in the books I've got, or anyone, anywhere, you can do it as a team like that. And just pick strategically the part that you want him to do. Okay. Let's talk about another one that you can do with the kids in the car. This would be another great one to get your husband involved in one part of it. All right? You're going to take a mystery ride. So you're going to blindfold your kids with a scarf, and you're going to plan on about 4 or 5 stops. You want to do this at night. I'll explain that in just a moment. But at each stop, they're going to lift up their blindfold when you tell them for about 10 seconds. They each have a piece of paper and a pen. And you say, okay, I want you to write down where you think we are. You've got 10 seconds. Don't tell your brother or sister. We're going to see how many you get right. And then they put that blindfold back down. And then you go to the next spot. Now, the part you're asking your husband to do is, hey, do you think you could map out a route that we could drive in maybe 10 minutes with 4 stops, 5 at the max, where if the kids are blindfolded and you drive someplace, when they lifted that blindfold, I don't want them to know where we are. I want them to be confused. Do you think you could do that? Do you think you could fool the kids? Oh, yeah. Yeah, you bet he can. In fact, he'll pull up behind the grocery store with the, there'll be the dumpster and a loading dock, and seeing things from an angle the kids aren't used to seeing. Yeah, he can fool those kids. He'll drive around the block a few times. He'll map out this route. It's well within a man's comfort zone. And he's beginning to feel better because he's taking part in this. All right, so you do this with the kids. I said do it at night. Why do we do it at night? Well, one, it makes it harder for them to tell where they're at, but what's the other obvious reason?
Dad's home.
What's that?
Dad's home.
No, nobody else
Dad's
sees you
home.
driving around with your kids with
Exactly. Yeah.
blindfolded.
Dad's home, that's a good one, but yes, right. We live in the cell phone age. You drive with kids blindfolded in the car, somebody's going to call 911. And you're going to get pulled over, but it would be great because it's a whole different lesson, and they will not forget. So, anyway, so you do this. Now, at the very end, after you've made these stops, I like to go to a fast food place and just get the kids some little snack to eat. A lot of times when they're eating, they'll listen well. Okay, so now you look at their list. Okay, where did you think we were? The first place, the second place, the third place? And you're just asking the kids for input. All you want to do is find a place where they weren't sure where you were at. They weren't sure. Maybe they got it wrong. Okay. Now, when you were in that spot, were you scared? And I'll be like, no. Well, come on. Did you feel like wrestling the wheel away from Dad? Did you feel like jumping out of the car and finding your own way home? No. Why? Well, what's the obvious answer?
They trust us.
Yeah, they trust Dad. Dad knew where he was going. Dad was driving. Now we transition to spiritual truth. And we teach them a little truth about life. So you know what? This is the same thing with life. There's going to be times in life where you're not really sure where you're at, where you're going, or why. And sometimes what we tend to do is we try to make something happen. And we try to take control of our life in some way. You know what we got to remember? God is in control. He's like Dad at the wheel. He knows where we're going. And we can relax and we can trust Him. And so, and again, we would share some scripture with them, but we encourage our kids to trust God just like they trust Dad. Does that make sense? Easily done? Yeah. And Mom and Dad can work together on that, or you can work on your own. Okay, another volunteer. Let's come on up here, and we'll do another sample. I've got a bag of rocks here, okay? I need somebody that's willing to stab this. I've just got like a little awl here. You can use a nail, you can use a pin, anything sharp. We're just going to stick this with some holes. Okay, I see she's getting ready, man. She's taking the sweatshirt off or the jacket off. Good. Now, do you think that you could hold this and stab it?
Try.
Okay. All right. I'm just leery about holding it while you're stabbing. No, it's okay. So you go ahead and just poke some holes in it. Yeah.
You want them to fall out?
No. But hit the other side too. It feels kind of good, doesn't it? Yeah, it does.
Get that?
Yes, because there's something about it. I don't know. Okay, that's pretty good. All right, let me take this from you. That's good. All right. How many rocks did we lose? None! That's a pretty good bag, right? We didn't lose any rocks. Okay, but let's check this. All right, so now hold that over there, and we got a pitcher of water. Now kind of open that thing up. That's it. Okay. Now we'll put some water in here. Oops. That's all right. Put a little more in there because we want to see. It is not in very good shape, is it? No, that bag is in a mess. Here's what we can teach her this. You did really good. We can just drop that down. Okay. Good girl. All right. What can we teach with that? I love to teach the way we talk. Kindness. Because there's times, we like taking a shot at somebody, don't we? And we know where to get them if it's a brother or sister. Or sometimes it's somebody at school or whatever. And just to kind of get the laughs, it can be something where it's really easy for them to take a shot at somebody. How does that person react? Oh, they laugh it off. Or they act like it doesn't bother them. Reality, probably bothers them a whole lot. Oh, they may not look like they're damaged, but they're getting hurt. They're getting hurt. There's a great verse in Proverbs that says, reckless words pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Proverbs 12:18. Reckless words pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. We encourage our kids, what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be a swordsman? You want to be one who gets the jab in there, who gets the laughs at somebody else's expense? You want to be the one that's hurting somebody? Or do you want to be the one who heals? The one who comes alongside somebody who's hurting and helps them? I want to be the healer. I think it's a way better calling. And so we can encourage our kids to do that. Now, you could take this thing and have them dry it up with a towel, hand them a box of Band-Aids, and say, fix it. And they'll put some Band-Aids on there. Now open it up and pour the water again. Number one, it looks ugly, but it's not going to hold. It's not going to hold. How many of you guys, I don't want to, like get anybody depressed here, but I'll bet you, if you took a minute, I'll bet 60 seconds, you could think of something that somebody said that really hurt, and it could have been years ago. Or maybe when you were a kid. It might have been something a parent said, or a teacher, or whatever. We probably all can come up with that. It hurts. It does damage. Reckless words pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. We encourage our kids to be kind with the things that they say. Don't take shots at the other one. You know what? Is that going to be effective? Yeah. Are kids going to need reminders? Yes. There's lots of different ways we can do that. We've got another one where we've got a dartboard, and we have them throw darts. And that's fun. But now we have a picture of each of the kids. And now we put a picture of one of the kids up there and let the others, the brothers and sisters throw. Much more fun when they do that because they want to get the eyes and they want to. And we talk about how, yeah, we like to take shots at each other. And again, we can teach the same lesson. You're going to be repeating these lessons. You're going to be teaching these lessons more than once because they're not going to get it all. It's not going to be always perfect. Point of it is this. We teach them these things and we show them a better way. Much more effective than saying, hey, 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 talk nice. And we do that. And we need to do that in between things. But sometimes we want to illustrate it in a way that they can really get it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. I know we're taking some of these things out of order, and that's okay. Let me go over 13 tips to help make sure that your devotional time, and then we're going to run through some more really quick. But here's some tips that, many of them learned the hard way to help make your devotional time that much more possible to keep going with it. Okay, number one, keep the kids involved with some sort of activity or object lesson, something that they can do. This is what we've been talking about. This is what we're demonstrating. We'll demonstrate some more. 2, follow up that activity with a brief tie-in to some biblical principle. Generally, keeping it within 5 to 10 minutes is plenty. 5 is better than 10. If you don't abuse the time factor, kids won't dread it. We have a tendency, sometimes men do, to drum it in, making sure they've got it. Our kids multitask. They're going to get it. The first time I said, even if it doesn't look like they got it, chances are they're going to catch it. Okay, 3, have family devotions once a week, but make it good. Practice it ahead of time, and you're going to have to pick up some supplies or whatever. If you're having devotions right now, more often than that, maybe you're a family that sits down and reads something out of the Bible every day. Terrific. Don't change that. But one day, a week, do an object lesson, do an activity. Why? It takes a lot of preparation to try to do something like this every day. It's easy to do once a week. But our kids tend to check out. As they get older, they're good at it. Some of you who were raised with family devotions yourself, you were probably good at looking like you were engaged, but your mind was someplace else. We want to make sure that they're getting the truth. And so it's really hard not to get it when you're doing something like this, because what happens is you're doing some activity or some object lesson, they're engaged in that, you hit them with what the truth is, and it just like melds them together in their mind. So they're okay. Okay. As they get older, number 4, pick a time that works best with their schedules. That's pretty important. 5, if the kids ask a question that stumps you, don't sweat it. You can always ask somebody at church, ask a friend, whatever. 6, if the kids get or act bored, don't give up. Don't give up. Sometimes they're just testing you on that. 7, if the kids have a hard time settling down, go with the flow. You want to avoid ordering quiet. It's not the type of thing, hey, we're learning about God here. You know? There's worse things than kids thinking that learning about God is fun. Okay? Number 9, a takeaway is a great idea. Now, by this I mean something that's a visual reminder of the lesson you taught, like putting that marshmallow man up on the refrigerator. Okay, and there's another one we'll do later. I'll give you another example of that. But it helps them remember it. Number 10, use your notes. It's okay to have notes or a book in front of you. It helps you keep on track. If you try to memorize it, it's too much work. You're going to quit. If you try to remember it all, you're probably going to go long and you're going to miss key points. I've never had anybody have any trouble with me having notes or a book in front of me. But here's the key. It can't be the first time you've looked at those notes or that book. If they get the idea that you're just kind of running through this with them, it sends a really bad message. That you didn't prepare, that they're not that important, that your message isn't that important. No, no, no. Hey, if you buy a book, or if you've got a book, you highlight it, you make some notes in the margin, whatever you want to do. They need to see that you've been there, you've thought about it, and there's something here important that you want to convey to your kids. Okay. 11, go with the kids you have. Now, if they've got friends over, as long as you're not embarrassing them, as long as you're not embarrassing your kids, when they get older, you have to worry about that. But honestly, if you're going to blow up an egg in a microwave, you're not going to embarrass your kids. Their friends would probably really like that. Yeah. Because their parents, chances are not that engaged, are not that involved with them. And so they really are hungry for that. So if you got other kids, run with it. Same thing if one of your kids are gone, there's a sporting event or there's something and one of them isn't there. Sometimes as they get older, it gets harder and harder to get everybody together at one time. And you start skipping weeks to try to get them together. No, no. Go with who you've got. Catch up with the one that's missing later. All right? 12, reinforce the application throughout the week after the devotion. Try not to call it out on the kids, though. Chances are you're going to mess up yourself. Call it out on yourself. For example, the one with the rocks and the kindness, talking kind to one another. Maybe you have a situation and you talk rude to your husband. Imagine that. And let's say you say something sort of sharp or not kind or whatever to your husband, and then that's when you catch it. You say, oh, kids, did you just hear I talked to Dad? That's exactly what I was talking about last week. That's what we're not supposed to be doing. So I need to say I'm sorry to you and to Dad and to God, and I got to work harder at that. Okay? We don't cover it up. We don't hide it. They noticed. And so we just take it that way. All right. Number 13. When you have multiple ages present of kids, target the oldest. Ah, right. Did I hear that? Huh. I'm so glad you hung. Because it's really important that you understand this. Again, I'm speaking from the other side. With the kids raised. It's a tendency that we bring it down to the level of the youngest. Huge mistake. Here's what happens. Your oldest one gets the message that this is for kids. And they'll check out. And it'll be very, very hard to ever get them back into devotional time. Because it's for kids. Especially as that older one is getting older. It's for kids. No, no, no. You focus on your older one. Don't worry about the young one. You focus on older. You've got less time. Your older one is sooner to be out of the house. Your older one is closer to the danger. If we were given a baseball example and somebody was on third base or somebody was going to run to first base and you had to make a play at one plate or the other, which one would you do? Which guy do you have to get out? The bases are loaded. Which guy do you have to get out?
Going home.
The one going home. Right. They're closer. Right. Your oldest one is closer to the danger, closer to leaving the nest. You focus there. Now, you can come back, circle back, and say, okay, now, to your little one, let me help you understand that. Or better yet, you have your older one. Would you help your little brother, your little sister understand what we were trying to teach here? And then you see if they got it. Does that make sense? Always the oldest. All right. You've got a bunch of ideas that you can actually do. Yes?
Number 8. You missed that one, isn't it?
Try to include as many of the senses as possible. Yes. Something they can taste and smell. If you can incorporate food, do it. And I'm serious there. I know I'm talking like a guy, but look at how many times, look at how many times Jesus did fantastic work around the meal. Some of the greatest stories that we love. I mean, you know, the whole thing that we talk about, you know, Jesus talking to Peter, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? He just cooked them breakfast. Okay? And so many other things. It talks about them, they're at the table. He's at this person's house and all this. And so he did great work around food. And I'll tell you something. As your kids get older and you run out to a fast food place, even if it's getting fries and a Frosty or something like that, just a little treat, while you want to tie something in, you've got their attention there. There's no TV, and hopefully you're making it a cell phone off time or whatever if your kids are getting older when you're having a meal. So anyway, okay, let me just move on. The glow stick. Jana mentioned the glow stick. Let's talk about that for just a quick second. Let's say we've got these glow sticks. So let's just hand some glow sticks out here so we make sure that some people have got. And so, right there. Okay, that's good. All right, last table. I'm not going to go all the way back there, but let's say we've got a glow stick. I've got one that's broken up here. So we're gonna. Can you come up here and just be my demo person? All right. You pick up some glow sticks at the dollar store. Glow stick in its packaging looks great. It's packaged to sell. It looks attractive. But if you don't take it out of the packaging, it'll never do what it was made to do, right? Okay. Now, we know how a glow stick works, right? It's got this plastic. I'm just going to borrow this for a second. It's got the plastic tube here with one chemical in it. And inside, there's suspended a little glass vial. And in that vial, there's a second chemical. So you have to bend it far enough to break that glass vial. So we do that. We break that, and then we shake it up. The chemicals mix, we get this reaction. So you bend it, you break it, and shake it, as she was talking about, and you get this great glow. That's how it works. Okay, I'm going to let you hold that. Now, when you're doing this with the kids, you make sure each one has a glow stick. And if your kids, you think they'll fidget too much with it, you just take one out and do it with that, and then you give them one afterwards to take. But do this by the glow stick if you can with the devotions. Here's a question that you want to answer. Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do bad things happen to good people? There's several reasons why. Several scriptural reasons we could look at, but we're going to just look at one with this. But you understand something? If you don't answer this question by the time your kids go to college, that's the very question that leads many kids away from the faith. Can you believe that? A simple question like that. Why do bad things happen to good people? Because if they don't understand it, if they don't get it, all they can conclude is, you know what? God's an idiot. God's a jerk. If that's the way God is, I don't want anything to do with him. He doesn't care that much. What is his problem? So, now we're going to talk to our kids. You know what? This is sort of like us. You know, this could be like a Christian. Hey, we look good. We're going to church. We got everything together. But chances are that's not why God designed us. You know, he didn't make us just to be looking good and never to have any problems or whatever. So sometimes he bends us and he breaks us. And he shakes up our world. We go through something really tough. And something changes inside. Something changes in our heart. And it's at those times that Christ shines through us in ways that he never could before. We're a different person. And the changes are actually for the better. And then we can actually help other people. That's the short on it, but you did great. Okay, good. So does that make sense? We have to answer that question before they go to school. All right, you could do things like this right up through when your kids go to college. You're teaching them things right up through there. Some of the things you'll do are a little bit different. For example, let me just give you an example. I know your kids are younger. Some might be a little bit older. But here's one when your kids are of dating age or they're thinking about dating. We do it with our high school seniors every year. You could certainly do it a lot younger than that. Okay, we take them to a used car lot. And we give them 10 minutes to pick out their dream car or truck. and you go to a small lot, not like a big car max or whatever, but a local one. You go on a Sunday because the lots are open, they want people to browse, but there's no salespeople there, so you can go freely. And so they pick it out. Now you have each one of them take them over to the car truck that they've picked out, and they're going to tell you and brothers or sisters or whoever why they picked it. And so we bring the digital camera, you know, okay, stand by it, okay, we take a video, okay, why did you pick this? And they tell us. Now, for the boys, oftentimes it's like, well, I just really think this, you know, really looks so great, or it's fast, or I can imagine what the guys would say if I drove up with this, whatever it is. That's about the depth of it. The girls, not even that deep, I'm afraid. Oftentimes it's cute, or it's the color that they like. So we do that. They picked it, you've got your pictures, now you run off to a fast food place. And you're going to debrief just a little bit and talk about it. Okay, now, I noticed that you picked these cars, but nobody said, well, this is the car I picked, but if we were really going to buy it, probably a good idea to have a mechanic look at it, right? None of the kids, I've never had a kid say that. But if you said, you know what, that'd probably be a good idea, right? Because if you want this car to go this distance, it's probably a pretty good idea to know what's inside. Yeah, they all agree with that. No problem. Transition to spiritual truth. And the same thing happens when we're looking at the opposite sex. You know, a lot of times, you know, as guys, we're saying, oh man, I like her lines. She looks good. Can you imagine what the guys would say if I walked up with her on my arm? Oh yeah. With the girls, he's cute. You know, it's not much different than when they look at a car. Anyway, the point of it is, if you want a relationship that's going to go the distance, you got to get below the surface stuff. You got to know about their heart. Who's the only one that knows the heart? God. Wow. God. Yes. Okay, so, yeah, God knows the heart. And so we encourage our kids, hey, you ask God to help you fall in love with the heart of that man or that girl. That's going to be the kind of girl that you can go the distance with. But you can have a relationship that's going to last the rest of your life. Okay, just want to give that as an example of things you could do. There's things you could do as they get older, all the way through. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Let's talk about, I think we're going to start winding it up here, I think. You go to the grocery store. And you can have your kids, you give them $3, $5, whatever, buy anything you want to eat or drink. And you're not going to give any editorial comment. They're just picking it out. What do you think they're going to get? Chips, pop, candy, right? Don't show me what you've got. You know, I'm not going to make any comment. You get home, they put it on the table. And they put it out. You say, okay, did anybody get any bread? Anybody get any fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, milk? No. They got junk food. If you lived on junk food all the time, do you think you get stronger or weaker or stay the same or whatever? Well, if your kids are older, they're not going to say that they're going to get weaker. But I think most of the kids would understand that it's probably not the best for you. It's not going to really help you get stronger. It might be enjoyable, but it's not going to help you get stronger. Especially as your kids are getting into those high school years or in their junior high years. I would say junior high more than even high school, but it's the kind of message you want to give them. Look, so let me get this right. I gave you 3 things. I gave you a little time, give them 10 minutes. I gave you some resources, I gave you money, and I gave you total freedom to pick what you got. You got nothing but junk food, nothing with nutritional value here. Yeah, that's right. Okay. It's just like life. God gives us the same 3 things. He gives us time on earth. He gives us resources. It could be abilities, it could be money, it could be whatever, talents. And He gives us the absolute total freedom to use them however we want. And oftentimes the choices we make, we choose things that have no eternal value. They're worthless. And so we encourage our kids to make wiser choices with the things that they get. Every one of these, we would put a little scripture with it and stuff. Does that make sense? I know I'm racing here, but I just want to give you as many ideas as I can. Understand, family devotions, having family devotions, it's not a magic cure-all. But a couple of important things start to happen. One, it gets easier to talk about spiritual things with your kids any old time. It becomes more natural. That's what you want. That's the example that it gives in Deuteronomy, where we want to be talking to our kids just in everyday life. Second, as parents lead family devotions, something happens to them. And I can attest to this, that I am absolutely 100% convinced that as a man, I'm a different man than I would have been if I had not been doing family devotions. Why? If you talk to your pastor, he'd probably say the same thing, that if he's preaching something, there's times where it like hits him right between the eyes, that, oh, I need to shape this area up a little bit. It's different. I don't know why it is. You can have personal devotions, and you might not transfer those things to your everyday life. But when you're teaching the kids, Holy Spirit seems to use it to bring to attention areas you need to shape up. And so what you do is you're making little corrections, little corrections, little corrections. You might not even realize it. But over long term, just like when you aim something, a little bit of correction makes a whole lot of difference. Over a long period of time, you're a different person. It changes us. It makes us more careful with our walk. And then our kids respect us. Understand this, that as a parent, when we're working on our walk, when we're trying to live right, not just when we feel like it, we'll keep our kids' respect. And if we have their respect, they're much more willing to learn from us. When kids are little, for example, Dad is Superman. You know, they think he can do anything. And after a while, they realize he can't do anything, but they still want him to be the hero, doing the right things. I don't mean an unhealthy hero worship. I'm talking about just, they're a hero, just doing the right things, even if it's hard. And if we don't do the right things, if we get sloppy, if I treat my wife unkind, if I don't treasure her, the kids lose respect and they get angry inside. You know, people wonder, why do teenagers rebel? Let me look at what's going on at 8 and 9 and 10 in your household. It's not when they hit 13 suddenly they rebel. No. Finally they're getting strong enough and big enough and they've had it. It's not something that happens then. It's happening earlier. That's why you want to work on it now. Because they want you to be good. They want you to be the hero. And when you don't, you're letting them down. And they can resent that. And then they lose respect. It's very hard to rebel against somebody that you respect, right? When you've got rebellion in the house, it's a loss of respect, chances are. And oftentimes that loss of respect has to do with the fact that you aren't really living the way you've said was important to live. Anyway, sometimes the devil can remind you of past sins and failures and says, hey, you're a hypocrite, you've disqualified yourself. No. No. Don't let that stop you. Yes, there's things we have to shape in our life, but we don't delay teaching the kids. We do it, whether or not we feel ready. And you're going to be improving yourself at the same time. When you mess up, you confess, you don't cover it up. It's like when you go on an airline flight. What do they do in the beginning? They go through those instructions, right? And they say if the cabin suddenly loses pressure, what? An oxygen mask will drop down from the overhead compartment. What do they tell you to do if you're traveling with kids?
Put theirs on first.
What?
Put yours on first.
Put yours on first. Right. You've got to get connected so that you can really help them. Same principle with our Christian life. If we want to impress our kids to follow God, we got to stay connected, or we're not going to be able to help them very long. But by the same token, we can't be endlessly adjusting this, to get it just right while they're starving. We throw it on, we work on ours, and we work on them too. We don't just wait until we think we've got our Christian life together, because it ain't going to happen. All right. I'm trying to think how we're doing time-wise. We're just about out, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll stop here. We can talk about other things afterwards. And if anybody has any questions that they want right now, or you can talk to us later. Anybody have any other questions they want to ask? Yes?
Do you always close in prayer?
Do we close in prayer for your devotional time? No.
Okay.
Not always. I mean, you can do it however you want. If they had a friend over, I may not. But we do sometimes you're in a place, you can or you may not. But you may follow up on that when you're praying with them at night, when you're putting them to bed, to help us with this other, to bring it back in. So it's not like it's mandatory, but you'd sure be praying yourself, though. beforehand and make sure it gets through. Yeah, good point. Anything else? Okay. Well, if you've got other questions, we'll see you after that. Anything that I should be hitting? Hey, if you've got kids that are in the 8 to 12-year-old range, you see a little poster there, Code of Silence. It's my debut novel, okay, for kids. It's going to be really good. It's with Zonder Kids, and it comes out in a couple months. I've got a little card over there as a reminder. You can get it on Amazon right now. Honestly, I love that book. No, it talks about honesty, and it talks about it in a way where I think it'll be a great read. It's really, as a father of 3 boys, it was written in a way where boys will read it. If you've got girls, they'll love it too. But here's the thing. One of our kids wasn't a reader. Hey, don't miss this. If you've got a child that's not a reader, get a good book like that and read to them at night, a chapter or 2. I wouldn't trade that for anything. Those years of doing that with my kids. Even the ones that were good readers, they liked having that habit, but there is just something about it, and you're teaching them great principles if you've got a good read for them. So anyway, that's that. Any other questions? We'll do that, or we can demonstrate some other things here. But I don't want to take up any more of your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Tim's going to stay for a little bit and has brought some of his books that he can answer more questions and we can talk with him about. And Jody's going to tell us how to do our craft, because we don't want to miss that.